What is Watson? Watson is a narrow AI solution created by IBM to play the game of Jeopardy! IBM and Watson gained a lot of publicity for playing and winning a televised game of Jeopardy! Against some of the game's best players. Watson itself is a computer which is comprised of about 4 terabytes of storage data, a large relational database, and 2,880 CPUs. While it may seem simple enough for a computer to play a trivia game, there are many challenges to overcome to get an AI to play Jeopardy! Challenges included processing the question, storing data, and retrieving that data. Questions in Jeopardy! Are phrased in a variety of ways, so it became a requirement for Watson to be able to analyze a sentence and then pick apart what it was being asked. And since the first part of fielding a question is knowing what you're being asked, natural language processing became a fundamental building block which allowed Watson to operate. IBM's team also decided to not allow Watson to connect to the internet, instead allowing Watson to have 4 terabytes of storage in the form of a relational database. With this much data, how can this information be retrieved? And for playing a successful game of Jeopardy! How can we get this information fast? Relations alone will also not be enough to be competitive in a game of Jeopardy! So how can we retrieve an answer if it can't make a direct relational database match? In IBM, the process of analyzing a question and generating an answer became known as Deep QA. Deep QA consisted of a few steps, namely analyzing a question, generating candidate answers, researching those candidate answers, and then scoring them. Arguably, the most important step in this process is being able to analyze the question. This relied heavily on natural language processing, and if this phase failed, the rest of the process would fail as well. Watson would analyze a clue by picking the sentence apart and extracting important details to begin its search and start scoring candidate answers. Earlier, we mentioned that questions in Jeopardy! Were phrased in a variety of ways. Here we have one of the clues which Watson was given during its live match, and emphasized one of the tricks which was used to parse the sentence and allow Watson to better narrow its search. It turns out that questions in Jeopardy! Often have this structure, where the answer is masked by a phrase, where replacing this phrase with the correct answer will lead to a factually correct statement. So, in our clue, if we replace this inflammation of the liver with hepatitis, the sentence is factually correct. This type of phrase was known as the focus by IBM, which allowed them to better parse the information being given to them and streamline their search. We mentioned that Watson would search for key information in a sentence to narrow its search, but what would that information be? The information that Watson was looking for was typically part of the focus, which IBM tried their best to have Watson highlight. Watson would then look for tags, which were words such as person, man, woman, president, place, and so on, to better direct its search, preventing it from spending resources on a candidate answer that didn't make sense, such as looking for more information about chocolate when the tag was asking about a president. Now, Watson would also look for other distinguishing features, such as proper nouns and dates, to do the same thing with those as well. These pieces of information would help Watson direct its search and find the correct type of data that it was looking for, and it would discourage it from researching a candidate answer if the tags did not match. Now that Watson has broken apart its clue and knows what to look for, how can Watson come up with the correct answer? After all, the relational database alone will not have enough data to be prepared for every question that can be thrown its way. Watson would now search through its storage consisting of Wikipedia and news articles for instances of the tag and other key information and see how much of that information overlapped. If enough of an overlap was found, then the item would be considered a candidate answer, and Watson would do more research on the topic. Otherwise, it would prune that part of the search and move on. This meant that the bar to entry to be a candidate answer must be low, since if the initial pass didn't consider the correct answer to be a candidate, then there would be no possibility of Watson actually finding the correct answer. Once all the candidates had been collected, a filter was applied to see if answers collected matched the tag that we found earlier to reduce the pool of answers. Once Watson filtered its candidate answers, it began a full-blown research effort to finally generate an answer. To score a candidate answer, Watson would treat the answer as a required phrase and would then estimate how closely each piece of evidence about each answer matched the given clue. Scoring methods included finding a number of overlapping words between a clue and the supporting passage, rare words in these phrases were given an extra weight, and matching words in the same order were scored higher than if matching words were ordered differently. Now that Watson can analyze a sentence and generate answers, Watson just needs to be able to play the rest of the game. So, now Watson needs to be able to not only use the buzzer, but decide whether or not it should buzz in, decide when it should buzz in, decide how much to wager, and decide which clue to select next when asked. These decisions were actually handcrafted algorithms created by the programmers at IBM, which emulated the strategies of other Jeopardy players. So the question comes to mind, is Watson really that smart? Is it the AI that everyone is expecting to gain sentience and take over mankind? No. No, it's quite far from that, actually. We saw that Watson actually doesn't have a real grasp of the world around it. It doesn't even have a real understanding of the words it's parsing, the questions it's been given, or the answers that it's been selecting. In fact, the early versions of Watson didn't perform well at anything outside of Jeopardy, which should be surprising to no one, since that is what it was originally created to do. Watson's answers were created by a combination of a powerful natural language processing algorithm, a large database, access to Wikipedia news articles, massive processing power, and many clever tricks, as well as some machine learning tactics, which allowed Watson to direct its efforts to statistically evaluating its candidate answers with key terms and overlapping data. This does not mean that Watson is not impressive. It's actually very impressive. It's just not as terrifying as the uninformed public may believe.